Good evening, everybody, and welcome to We Win with Teeuwen, episode 7, where we're going to discuss the really awesome tension, which apparently equals a pull if you're watching it right now. Tension. That's what we're going to discuss today. The concept of tension and how does it fit into our daily lives. Just a bit of a recap on our last show, which went a little long. Tolly and I discussed the concept of opportunity loss and its impact. That was show number 6. And before that was show number 5, where we discussed a Fun Day Monday topic. So, coming up next, on this coming Friday, we have another interview with success featuring Tolly, and next week, hopefully, my really good friend and colleague Amanda Duso will be joining us on the show as well during the week, so stay tuned for that. So, once again, my name is Justin Teeuwen, and welcome to We Win with Teeuwen, where today we're going to have a very brief show on tension. I've been listening to some of my viewers, and some of them have asked if we could make the show a little shorter. So we're gonna try that format for a while. And if you want the show to be a little longer, you just email us at wewin@timeconsultinginc.com, or you can subscribe to our newsletter, timeconsultinginc.com/newsletter. So, let's get down to it. Tension. What is it? Well, I got a little prop today. I'm using my keys to describe tension today. So I'm going to switch here. There we go. Tension is a very interesting physics concept. You see, tension is something that we use as a pulling force only. If I were to kind of switch here for a moment, tension is only a pull. So I'm going to switch down here. Tension is only a pulling force. So what does that mean for us? A pulling force. I'm going to explain that to you. So if you're listening to this on your iPod and you have like a set of keys with you or something like that, then what I'd recommend is to grab a rope or a keychain or something that is like a rope. That's me making the sound of a rope near the microphone. And preferably if you have someone else. Now, unfortunately, right now, it's just me. So I'm going to use my left and right hands. If you're by yourself, you can do this. And if you're with another person, you can have them work with you. Take the rope into your hands and just let it slack a little. So you've got one end held in, say, your left hand, and the other hand, your right, will hold, say, another rope, end of the rope. And the rope is kind of slack in between. And as we notice, there isn't a lot going on here. In terms of physics, we are holding a piece of string, or rope, if you will. Now, as soon as I pull that rope tight, we now notice that there is a little bit of what we call tension. Tension is the force acting inside the rope. So what do I mean by that? The force acting inside the rope. If I were to draw a little arrow here, let's go ahead and do that. If I were to draw an arrow going, say, both directions, I'm just going to quickly flip that around. There we go. We would denote that tension goes in both directions. So, if I had some sort of central point, say here, that I marked as the middle of the rope, and I decided, okay, I'm going to measure the force at the middle of the rope. So again, if you're holding that rope in your hands, you can relax it, but if you're holding that rope in your hands, in the middle of the rope, going to the left, there is a force called tension, which we usually denote by the letter T. This is like Physics 101. And the letter T would represent the tension, and it would be a force. So if I was pulling it with, say, a force of, I don't know, say 100 newtons, 100 newtons of force, then that would be the magnitude of the tension. So whatever I'm pulling with, if I have the rope and it's attached to a fixed object, say this hand is fixed, and I'm just pulling with 50 newtons, the tension will also be 50 newtons. So there we are, tension. Now what's interesting is because of Newton's third law, we know that the tension will be equal and opposite. So there will be a responding force. And this actually has a lot to do with the inner mechanics of the string itself. And we've experienced this. If you pull on a plastic bag at a grocery store, Okay, you're at a grocery store and you pull on a plastic bag. If you pull quick enough, you can actually rip the bag right off of the rest of the bags. However, if you don't, you just pull it gently, you can pull it out. And that's because the tensile strength within the rope itself, what keeps it together, isn't strong enough to snap it. And we've all seen those kind of epic scenes in movies where, the character pulls on the rope hard enough that it causes it to snap, or someone's holding onto something and the rope or the string that starts to unwind and then it snaps. So that's what happens if tension gets too great. But in a general sense, if I'm pulling on it, say my left hand is pulling with 50 newtons, in order to keep it steady, my right hand also has to pull with 50 newtons. Okay, just using a general number. So if I pull with a certain force, and I'll call it T, because it also represents the tension, my other hand can also pull, and now we have tension. And what's interesting is, so long as these two forces are pulling, they're connected to each other. As soon as I relax one hand, okay, even though this hand's doing the pulling, if I relax one hand always, there's nothing happening. And same thing happens. So if I take my right hand and I pull with my right hand, but the left hand loosens, then the right hand does nothing. So in order for this to work, there has to be pulls in both directions. If, for example, you have a rope and it's attached to a fixed object like a wall or a ceiling, and you pull on it, kind of like a swing, then you would feel the tension in the rope because one end, or of the chain, because one end of the chain is held to the top bar and the other is the weight of the chain itself, or you pulling it down. So the net effect of tension, what I'm getting at here, is that tension is a pulling force and it requires an equal and opposite reaction. Okay, that's another important point. Tension is equal and opposite. So let's see here. Write that down. Tension is equal and opposite. That's an important concept to remember when we're talking about tension. I'm going to go ahead and make that a little bigger. Oop. Tension's equal and opposite. That's really big. Make that a little smaller. There we go. Tension's equal and opposite. Now, so what? So tension is equal and opposite. Well, we also know a few other things. If the tension gets too great, it will break the connection. If the tension's too great, it'll break the connection. And if the tension's too small, if there's no pulling whatsoever, so if the force is too big, much bigger than we'll just say much bigger, then we have no the tension snaps. That's it. If the force is too small, then there's no connection. So tension essentially has this nature of being equal and opposite. That's really the main point that I wanted to get across with tension today. So if the tension's too big, the tension snaps. If the force is too small, there's no connection at all. And this leaves us with the notion of tension. So what does that mean? How does that connect to life? So let's talk about tension in another context now. That's the physics of it. But now we're going to talk about it in terms of life. We say, there was so much tension in the room. There's a lot of tension between two people. There's a lot of tension between a person and their job. I'm feeling I'm feeling tense. That's another word we say. I'm feeling tense right now. And we relate tense to stress. Stress is also another interesting physics concept, but we'll just talk about tension today. So we say, I'm feeling tense right now. Or there's tension between me and my partner, my romantic partner, let's say, or me and a friendship, or me and a family member. Tension between people. Also tension between a person and a concept, a person and something in their life. So this tension that connects everybody, that pulls everyone together, is what connects us. However, we often find that we're complaining about tension. Well, tension is what separates me from someone else. We have a lot of friction. We'll talk about friction. Friction's another interesting one that we spoke about last time, if you remember. So we say that there's friction as in some resistance, but tension is something we also say, that there's something called tension between people, or tension in a situation. So now I'm going to apply that to everyday life. If tension is what connects people, okay, think about it. So there's you and there's someone else. You take your left hand and your right hand, put that rope between your hands now, and in your left hand you're holding, let's say, you, and in your right hand is another person, and now pull them apart equally. That's tension. Now, if there is too much tension, the connection breaks. I can pull it apart. However, if there's not enough tension, if there's no tension whatsoever, no forces pulling between you, then there's no connection whatsoever and nothing happens. So in order for me, let's say this was a sleigh and I wanted to move it, I would need just enough tension. Too much tension, then the string would snap. I wouldn't have enough. Too little tension, and I'm not going to pull it anywhere. So if you're to think of this as something that's going to move, in order for it to move, I would need to have tension. In other words, I need to pull it. And isn't that true between people? A little bit of tension is what connects us, and it actually can be useful. It can be a force that drives the relationship somewhere. It can be a force that drives your career somewhere. It can be a force that drives your person somewhere. Tension can be the thing that moves you. Too much tension, and it snaps. We lose the connection. But if there's no tension at all, there are no forces pulling each other apart, then there's nothing to connect the two people. And that's where we've heard in relationships, oh, we're just too similar. If you're too similar to someone, you may not have anything pulling you apart. There's nothing, there's no resistance, there's no pulling between two people. So if I'm a person and you're a person and we're in a relationship, then I can have differences from you, and so long as those differences are equal, that when I pull away, you also pull away a little bit, but we remain connected, then that's a healthy tension, and we can actually take that tension and move it somewhere. However, if we instead focus on the tension between two people as being too little, like there's no friction whatsoever, I should avoid using the word friction here. If there's no tension between us, no forces pulling, then we could result in no connection. In other words, I would feel like there's nothing there. So tension is actually what connects us to each other. Too much tension, and there's no connection. Too little, and there's also no connection. There has to be just the right amount for things to move forward. And that is today's topic. Having a little bit of tension can actually be productive. And remember, forces are what cause a change in movement. We'll talk about forces another day. We'll talk about what it means to move. Maybe that'll be next scientific law of success topic. A force is what causes something to move. And a tension is a type of force. It is what binds two otherwise unrelated objects together. It is the pulling force between two objects. And they are connected by a rope, by some other force. I mean, in physics, there could be all sorts of forces that cause tension. But in people, there are lots of forces that cause tension too. Maybe it's my will, maybe it's your will, maybe it's my interest, your interest. It could be all sorts of different things that connect two people together. But so long as there is a mutual pulling between those two forces, so long as it is equal, you can actually see some movement. And we might think, well, it needs to be exact. But if you look at it, if I have exactly equal pulling, this rope will go nowhere. If one pulls just a little more than the other, then it goes somewhere. And if the other one pulls a little more than the other, it also goes somewhere. So when we think about tension, although ideally it would be equal, if it were equal, you would go nowhere. If it were preferenced in one direction, you're going to start moving in that direction. And if you don't like that, you can start preferencing it to the other one. So between two people, if one person and another person have a difference of opinion, the first person might be the one leading. And together, they will move somewhere. In the consequence, if it's number two person that is doing the leading, then they will do the pulling. But both people have to be there. Both people have to be pulling back and forth a little bit for there to be some tension. Tension equals connection. If we were to really look at it, tension equals connection. So that's sort of the lesson of today. A little bit of tension in our lives can be an okay thing. And too much tension, and we obviously see that things will break. And not enough tension, and we see that there's no connection at all. But if we realize that a little bit of tension can go a long way to getting us to move somewhere. Because remember, forces are what cause things to change their direction. So if there's something in your life that you feel you are stagnant, it is moving nowhere and you're not going anywhere, then maybe a little bit of tension is the cure. It may make you feel a little uncomfortable, but it might just start pulling you in the direction you need. Which is why I always say in my book, it's about time. You have to be ready to make yourself uncomfortable. You have to be ready to let go and let something uncomfortable push you. I'll be honest with you, today, when I was recording this show, I was thinking maybe I shouldn't record it, but I realized it's Canada Day, hence the red and white. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm wearing a nice little red suit with a white shirt. Happy Canada Day, everybody. That was yesterday. And the important thing to realize is that tension can be a connection between things, and that it can help us move somewhere. So it's okay if it feels a little uncomfortable. It's okay if it doesn't feel the most relaxed possible, because if it were equal, we would go nowhere. And although that might be great and will remain in connection, which is great for relationships, it also is okay if it starts moving in one direction, just so long as there's not too much tension that you snap away that connection. So, to wrap up today, tension is a pulling force. It is a pulling force that connects two things. Too much and it snaps, too little and there's no connection. But if there's just enough, you can actually start moving things, and you can make things move in your life. If you feel like you're stuck somewhere, take a rope, throw it over some other force that's going to pull you in a direction, and see where it leads. If you don't like that, you can always pick a new direction and travel from there. I didn't see anything in the contacts today or in the chat, so we're going to wrap up the show for today. You can log in to our newsletter, timeconsultinginc.com/newsletter, and you can also email me at wewin@timeconsultinginc.com. Again, my name's Justin Teeuwen. It's been really great hanging with you tonight, and next time we're going to look at forces and what does force mean in our everyday lives. Thank you very much for joining me, and have a great day.